Hi, it's Mrs. Rouse. I wanted to start this video with a couple announcements. We haven't, usually I'm filming down for my announcements. I don't have to this time, so I'm starting out this way. A couple things. I want you to know this assignment needs to be completed in colored pencil. So you can't use markers to fill it in or paint or anything else. This is a colored pencil assignment. It'll take you a little bit longer, but I planned on that amount of time. It's really not very big. It's only 4 by 4. And actually a heavy pressure type of pencil application looks really good. But I think you have plenty of time within class to watch the video, which is about 33 minutes. Watch the video, get started on your project, and complete it and color it. Plenty of time in 80 minutes. Also, you can use your very fine black Sharpie, the one that looks like this, not the one that looks all chubby. So don't use the wider tip, use the very fine tip if you want to outline before you color it in. Here's an example of one that was done like that. You can do that, and make sure that you use a ruler when you do any outline, whether it's in colored pencil or marker. You can see this one has some really nice edges. If you don't use a ruler, a straight edge when you're doing your final drawing here with the colored pencil, it's going to look really sloppy, and it takes away for how nice your project is. So you can use a very fine tip of black to outline before you use colored pencils, but don't, just remember that whatever you choose to do, make sure that you use a straight edge to keep your letters nice and crisp. So the main thing is the letters are going to the vanishing point, right? Not just any old block letters. That's what we're looking for. In the video, we'll talk about this. At some point during the video, you just start your own drawing, and you're watching the video. You can always refer back to it. You can always ask me questions. You can take a photo of something, send it to me in an email. I'll try and get right back to you. I also wanted to tell you that I gave you a piece of graph paper when I gave you all the worksheets this time, so that it has, blue 4 by 4 graph paper. Anyway, you can use that piece of graph paper to help you design your letters. So it would be in either one of the 2 packs of the last packs of papers I gave you. It's small, so it'll be in a smaller collection of papers. I think it's with the watercolor paper. Anyway, look for that graph paper. I think that'll make your life easier. And if you want to transfer it from the graph paper to the drawing, all you have to do is draw on the graph paper and then put it up on the window and put your paper on top and trace it, right? And it'll save you time. Sometimes an extra step saves time. So I encourage you, if you want to do that, I've provided that for you. Other things you need to know, we're just doing the 9 by 12 size. And I think it mentions it could have been on another piece of paper, but when part of the video was made last year, we didn't know what papers you still had at home, but I do know you have the right paper, and you should have already started this drawing yesterday. So I'm just going to put this on the front of your video. I think you'll really like this, and I just want to encourage you, do the best you can with perspective, and then have a lot of fun coloring it. It's kind of a project people typically like. And you're going to either take a photo and send it to me when it's done, or turn it in person. It's kind of nice too, because then I can hang some up. Thank you. To remind you of is, if for instance you make some type of mistake, or you feel like something's not 100% perfect, because I can't walk around the classroom helping you, you do the best you can. You try it a couple times, do the best you can, finish off the project and send it to me. You'll have some projects that you're really proud of, and maybe a project or 2 that are kind of okay. This project, most of it should be great, but there's a couple places you can maybe make a mistake, and you're just going to have to do as best as you can. So please, reminding you, finish the project, send it in. I know that it's hard not to have me sitting there around you. So when we're doing 1-point perspective, if you remember, in a 1-point perspective situation, there's always one horizon line, there's always one vanishing point. The vanishing point is always on the horizon line. We can use parallel lines in our drawing. Oh, no, did Mrs. Rouse say a bad word? We can't use that word parallel. It's a bad word. It doesn't apply in the world of perspective. When lines start going back to the vanishing point, the angle of the lines is different than each other. So don't think of the word parallel. Also, the other bad word we have is the word measure, because the length of those lines going to the vanishing point will be different depending on their location. So I'm going to put the word measure in here too. So if you start thinking, oh, I'll just measure that, stop what you're doing, you're making a mistake. If you're thinking, oh, that's just parallel, stop what you're doing, you're making a mistake. This is some of the best tips I can give you right there. Okay, so it's gonna, you can use, we will have the use of horizontal lines in this drawing, we will have some vertical lines in this drawing, but nothing really involving parallel as such, or measuring, unless I actually, you know, we measured out the front box. So yeah, but that's not in perspective, it's just this setup. Okay, what we did last time, I wanted to show you, 1-point perspective is not really necessarily baby perspective. You have situations that are pretty complicated in 1-point perspective. For instance, if you're drawing, let's say downtown Colorado Boulevard in Pasadena, let's say here's, what's that street? That street right by our little piece of freeway here. Here's our vanishing point. Let's say this is Colorado Boulevard here, going to the vanishing point. And then we have these big buildings. And then the tops and the bottoms are going to the vanishing point. Here's another building next door to it. The top and the bottom to the vanishing point, and so on. So this is a 1-point and you can make this drawing as detailed as it needs to be, but the setup is basically just, this is a 1-point perspective setup. It's a real life situation. This whole drawing would be complete in 1-point perspective. So you get the idea. It's used a lot. It just depends on your situation. Do I need a 1-point perspective situation? Do I need something else? 1-point perspective, our only limitation is you have to be perpendicular to the front of what you're drawing. You can see right here, I'm perpendicular to this, but the sides of this are going back towards it. On your camera, you can see this box actually does have, pretty cool, you can see it has a vanishing point, and I could draw these 2 lines down, and I would say the vanishing point's right about here if I were to draw this box. It doesn't exist on this piece of paper, it exists here. Anyway, you can see that kind of happening. 1-point perspective, our only limitation is we're perpendicular to the front of the building, like right here, we're perpendicular to these buildings. Okay, let's start kind of working on the project. What we did last time, we had a square, and then we had the corners of it go back to the vanishing point. Their relationship to each other is that they go to the same vanishing point. It has to be the same vanishing point. 1-point perspective. You can't have other things going to other vanishing points. They all have to go to this vanishing point, or it doesn't make sense. It's an alternate universe. So that's the relationship here. Like I said, you can always check your drawings by holding them up, looking across the vanishing point, down across the drawing. Oh yeah, everything's going to my vanishing point. It must be correct. And then we have the back side of our boxes just mirror what's going on in front. So these corners A and B, they have a back side A, B, B, and they just mirror it. So this line happens to be horizontal, that one is too. This line happens to be vertical, that one is too, because they're doing the same thing as the front. Then we got a little bit more complicated. We made a couple letters, and I showed you how to make a curve. To make a curve, let's go make a really wiggly curve here. All you have to do is take your pencil and put your pencil on your vanishing point this time. Swing it to the edge of the curve, and you take that line to your vanishing point. So if I was going to put this whole little squiggly line in perspective, I could do that, just a matter of how much time I wanted to spend on it. And then anyway, all those lines, if it's a curve, would go this way. So to draw this, I just mirror what's on the back side. This would be kind of like this. I'm coming down like this, and then this would look something. I'm estimating
these curves. Later we're going to learn how to make curves a little more systematically, but for our purposes right now we're going to estimate how far back they are, because we know the concept of measuring doesn't work, so it's not going to be a correct concept anyway. We'll just have to estimate. Anyway, so remember all these lines, whether it's a curved line or a corner of something, everything goes to that same vanishing point in that situation. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to be making a project. We're making our initials in this small square. So it's not going to be as big as the other samples, just because I'm worried about how big the paper is you're working on at home. I'm probably going to just make mine in block letters. So something like this is the result of the end of the project, just block letters going off to a vanishing point. So this is kind of cool. They designed them so they touched, however you want to design them. You can be more creative with the shapes of your letters. This one will be easy to work with too, because it's set up very horizontally and vertically. It's an easier setup than some, just like the last one you saw. But if you want stylized letters, that is also fine. If you want to start getting a little bit more complicated, this will also work. It's going to be slightly harder to work with, slightly harder to design so that it's designed well. And this is a very high-end sample, so I'm not encouraging you to do this unless you're kind of inspired to. But we have not only the problem of that there's a lot of curves and they're not set up perfectly horizontal and vertical on the paper, so that two things are already happening. And then they also decided to do a special effect of a kind of a see-through letter here saying the other letter. So there's multiple things making this sample harder. Some of you are like, got it, I got to do it, I have to do it. And some of you are like, let's stick with the block letters, and that's fine. Over here, this is going to be scratch paper, but you're going to send me a photograph of everything. This is really your project right here. But with your scratch paper, think about what you want to do to design your letters. Let's say my letters are KR. I don't have a middle name. So I can start thinking about what would be interesting with a K and an R. So I can start thinking about what do I want to do with my design. So maybe I could do something like this, or maybe I could even take out that line right there. Is that interesting or not? You know, do I want to try like a kind of a, I don't know, puffy letter, or maybe this is really thick here and this is skinny out here. Maybe I think that's interesting, and then I have an R down here, kind of like that. I might try that. So this is super thick. So try a few things here where you try, you know, if you do something squiggly, it has to have a thickness to it. It can't be just a line, so everything has to have a some type of a thick piece to it to put into perspective. So I'm not particularly liking that K, but you know, if I wanted something in script or something, you can practice this. It can just be a block letter. If you can't stand it, print one out of your computer and make it larger so you can trace it. That'd be fine. We're still going to put it in perspective. I'd rather you try to draw it, but you could, if this is freaking you out, try that. One thing I can teach you how to do, basically, if you have a letter that's hard to draw, let's say let's say a W. If you make your letter in a box, we used to have lettering classes before they had computers. So here's a box. My W is going to be that big. So I find the middle of it. This is the middle of my W. So I know that my the point that's going to stick up is going to be right here. I know the two sides, I want them to be about the same size, about this thickness here, so it ends up looking the same. And if you kind of come up with some type of a formula, if you build it into a box, you're going to get a nice even W. Now once I have this W, if I don't like the way it looks, I can make some changes. If I want to build it so the two sides kind of angle in, I can also do that. But sometimes if you work with kind of a box to design the whole thing, since we're doing the format, you can use a ruler to do this part of the drawing. It's yes, it's measuring, but we're not putting it in perspective, so we're not, that rule doesn't apply yet. So you can build things like that if you want, or just freehand. So for this very first drawing, so this is what an older drawing that I have here. This is what I was doing. I was showing them how to make some different letters. Since ours is pretty small too, so if the letter's not quite perfect, it's not going to show up. And sometimes you come up with different things. Your initials, you can have 2 or 3 initials. It can be your initials. It doesn't have to be. Since my first name is K, I could just do K instead of KR, right? That's up to me. You could use your middle name. I want your actual name somewhere on the paper, so if what you're giving me is something different, that's okay. If you want to use a different word, it's kind of like this kind of a nickname that you have, I don't even know you have, that's okay, do that, and because your name's going to be right here on the paper. So I'm going to try this one. I'm going to start drawing this. So go ahead and start thinking about how you're going to design your project. You want to push it a little bit lower down here on the side, because it's going to kind of grow towards your vanishing point. So let's see. I want those 2 halves of the letter to be, let's say it's about 1.5 inches. 1.5 inches. I want them to be the same size. Or is that 1 inch and a, whoa, that's 1.5 inches. 1.5 inches. Okay. And then I'm going to use my angle. So however you want to design yours, using my angle on the side of the paper here to help me draw some horizontal lines. I can use it for vertical lines. And I'm also kind of freehanding it. It's not gonna, see how I'm using the angle on the side of the paper? And then I'm going to put in a vertical line here. And then let's say, I'm just designing this. You can design whatever you want. Let's say I want that to be about this far over. That's about 1 inch. So let's make it exactly 1 inch. Pull this down here, another vertical line. And they can be freehand, they can just be floating around. I'm just trying to show you, if you spend some time, you can maybe even make it nicer. So let's make that, that's that about 3/4. See, that's 3/4. 3/4. Almost done with my design here. I'm using a 2B. If you're using your 2H, then your drawing will be slightly less smudged than mine, slightly neater and slightly more precise. So I recommend the 2H. I just use the 2B so it's very clear for you guys to see. So this is my beginning of my design. I should probably move that part of the R over, but maybe I'll squish it. So let's say if it looks kind of like this. I want that part of the K to be right above that, so I'm going to use my angle here again. Move it up here. This part of the K. And then, so that was about just over 1/2 inch. That's how much room I have. I'm all into things being working out in a nice symmetrical way, so I'm going to sketch this. So this is my design. And then I'm just going to take my angle and kind of tighten up a little bit before I'm done. So whatever yours looks like, it can be like really developed, or it can be kind of simple. Next step I'm going to do is I'm going to start putting it in perspective. I'm going to get rid of part of these lines. So hopefully you're just designing something as well as the same time I'm designing mine. Give myself some nice corners, nice nicer lines here and there. Okay, so the next step, once your letters are in there, we're going to draw them towards your vanishing point. At this point,